Hello, everyone. This is your senior teenager, and here to talk about the myth of millennial entrepreneurship. And we have our special guest today. You see him there on the screen, Shashidhar Bhat. Shashidhar Bhat, welcome to this episode.
Thank you,
And
Nirja.
yes, and let me introduce Shashidhar. He's the founder of the Green Workforce in, a passionate entrepreneur with a disruptive idea to solve employability and employment issues in India and elsewhere. He's a balanced socio-economic impact is what he looks for in his activities. Before founding his own startup, he's worked rigorously in IT and the communication industry, offering solutions to small and medium businesses primarily. The diverse professional experience in customer facing roles is Shashidhar's core strength. We are going to dive into this subject right away. And Shashidhar, my first question to you on the subject of the millennial entrepreneurial myth is you wrote on the Facebook, each hour of sweat, every rupee burnt chasing a startup idea ought to be fruitful. Now, how do you ensure that you're a part of the startup community? How do you ensure that, Shashidhar?
Basically, the statement is from the concept of gig economy. Actually, in practice, what happens is the guys who worked in the industry for organizations, the companies, they come out to start the venture. When they are working, probably they have some cushion. They would have made some money, and with that backup, they think they can build a good venture. So with that, some savings, they start building the product. By the time they finish completing the product, somewhat it may not be the perfect product, but somewhat to their satisfaction, they finish it and they say, "Hey, I'm done with this product, and it is good to go in the market, but I don't have any money to market it." For marketing, they opt for zero budget because they have spent all their savings, all their money on product development. This is a typical scenario with those guys who work in industry who quit that to start their startup. Now, gig economy is something which, on contrary,
Hmm.
will not suggest picking up a big thing at one shot. Instead, we opt for a model, we go for a model wherein the entire business is broken into small tasks, small projects, small assignments. We call it as gigs, and we keep iterating our efforts into those gigs. So that is where your investment of money, time, and resources are more optimized
Hmm.
because you keep learning out of every task, every assignment, every project. That is the reason. So gigs, you make it very small to test the waters. You once you're confident that this is what it is, you move on to the next one, you scale it up. That is the way an entrepreneurship has to be built. That is where this statement, every rupee
Yes.
spent in building the startup, has to be thought through, and it has to be executed accordingly.
Right, Shashidhar. But many youngsters do not become part of this gig ecosystem. They are on their own and they just take off. They don't sit for placement uh, during the placements in their professional schools. They don't take on those offers. They just want to dive straight into entrepreneurship. And then they read a lot of books, watch a lot of movies, and they try to make a go of it just completely on their own. So my question to you is that this entire culture also celebrates failure, right? You say fail fast and learn fast, but with every failure comes the consequence, and in India, mostly the family bears the consequence.
I understand.
What do you say?
I understand, and that is really a painful scenario what we are seeing it now, because the statistics says less than 10% of startups are successful, and 90%, more than 90%, they fail. Now, when a startup founder fails, the venture fails, the founder fails, and actually it is his family, his own, the parents, friends and family, they are the first people, who realize the burnt of this uh, founder, the kind of pain what he goes through. Even before it is passed on to the family and friends, he himself, undergo a lot of pain within. Now, to prevent this, one should not jump into entrepreneurship just like that. So the preparation on the founder's side has to be a proper homework before actually he takes up the venture. So that is where entities like Founder Institute have emerged. But unfortunately, in our scenario, now all the ecosystem, the government ecosystem or the academic ecosystem, they are in hurry. They are somewhat hurrying to, bring this startup culture in an aggressive way. That is where many the procedural stuffs are not followed. That is what is hurting the society as a community. I
Absolutely.
understand. I clearly understand your pain. Yes.
Yes, and this is something that I want to talk about, primarily about this aspect which never gets spoken about, Shashidhar. There's such a lot of demonization happening in the media of parents in India, particularly for pushing their children towards a secure job. You want
True.
to become an entrepreneur, and then subsequently, you also talk about work life balance. That becomes such a major issue at work. But
True.
when you're becoming an entrepreneur, it comes with completely different challenges. And my question is it ethical to attack a vulnerable young entrepreneur's primary support system? Does your gig economy or your startup culture address this part of this entire story of entrepreneurship?
So two things here. Actually, both the side, the young who is venturing into a new domain of entrepreneurship, and the seniors in the family, both the end has to be, they have to talk, they have to discuss, and they have to work together. Now, for the seniors, probably they're not aware of the kind of technology disruptions happening because of the emergence of so-called industry 4.0. The technologies like artificial intelligence and the next quantum computing, or prior to that you have parallel blockchain coming up in a big way. You have 3D printing in manufacturing, AR, VR, mixed realities, taking up aggressively. Now, these are the ones which is actually changing the landscape of so-called secure 9 to 5 jobs.
Hmm.
No more those secure 9 to 4 jobs are available. Very, very less. And that change, that transformation is a very drastic transformation. So if the
Yes,
seniors in the family understand the challenge of this, obviously you are aware of about the VUCA world, volatile,
absolutely.
complex, ambiguous, and a
Uncertain.
complex world, right?
Yeah.
So that when an academy, the college or the university is actually experiencing, because all their admissions used to happen based on their placement records. Now that
Mm.
placement is a difficult job for them. That is
Yes.
where they are trying to find the workaround. They are thinking that entrepreneurship, instead of seeking a job, why not become a job creator, is their wordings, from the placement cells. That is where this push is for the college going. However, that itself is not enough. There has to be a proper ecosystem built. And academy, the campuses are not the best place to build the startups, because none of their faculties, none of the administrative, the system what they have, they're not coming from the startup ecosystem. Instead, they would have acquired the knowledge through media, through other sources, or
Exactly.
maybe the short trainings of 1 week, 10 days kind of training. That's not enough. So if an academy has to push entrepreneurship in their campus, they have to rope in the industry people as a part of their ecosystem, and that has to be made accessible to the young ones in the campus. That is where the success can come out of that.
That's interesting. But what about the parents? If when their child tells them that he doesn't want to, he or she wants to be on their own, what should the adults, what should the parents do? What should they tell the child? Where should they send him
Actually,
or her?
yeah, the,
Hmm.
the, the young ones have to discuss with their family. Now when he's building an entrepreneurship, a startup, so the startup is the appropriate word, because startup is connected with some innovation, by
Hmm.
definition. That's what it is. So that innovation is expected to solve some problem. If
Right.
your son or a daughter who is thinking of a startup idea, that has to be connected with some world needs. It could be the United Nations SDGs, it could be our own country demands, requirements, or it is something which solves your city problem or a district problem, or it can be a village problem.
Hmm.
Now, if the family is convinced that, hey, my son, my daughter is passionate to solve this problem, now the family make up their mind, and that is where the work starts. The family
Okay.
can support the young one to do so. It is not that he can eradicate the problem altogether. He may not be 100% successful, but
Hmm.
even if he is successful to address the problem 5%, 10%, 20%, it's okay, because he is passionate. He is somewhere is solving someone's problem. It could be his own problem, his own family's problem, and it's a scalable problem that many such families are facing. Now everybody is connected to a cause. When there is a cause, there is the synergy between all in the family, and all the resources, time, money, investment can be channelized to bring the optimum output. If it is not, if it is simply a replication of an e-commerce startup, or it is
Hmm.
something else which has been heard in Europe or Australia or US, and we are trying to do with some manipulation, some tweaking, etc., that may not work. And the seniors in the family, obviously they are disconnected with such things, and there is no sync at all between the two, and that is where the actual
Yes.
the hurt is.
Hmm. True. And some of these words keep popping into my head that we are actually losing an entire generation to this delusional, notion of epic success. And because the rate of success, what is the statistics? What is the rate of success? And what happens to those who cannot make a go of it? What has your experience been?
Actually, employability rate was very, very low, according to many researchers. What they did, the employability of colleges and universities in India was hardly between 10 to 15%. So the education at campus itself was disconnected from what the
mm,
industry was asking for. And now the scenario is that the same students, same environment is trying to push for another direction, so called entrepreneurship, right? So obviously entrepreneurship or a startup journey is much harder, much difficult than more difficult than the employment scenario. That is where the failure rates are higher. So,
mm,
in our observations, if you talk about the campus entrepreneurship, it is probably 5-6% of success, and rest of them will fail. Now, what is the definition of a success or a fail is a matter. So if it is only earning cash and bank balance, then probably it is a different thing. But solving a problem, if the startup is connected to a purpose, and if there is some impact he could make attached to the startup, and that itself is a success. If there is a satisfaction with the founder, for the family, among his own friends, that he did something, and that is a success. So success or a failure is a yardstick different for different people. According to me, my proposition is that you go with some purpose driven startup never fails. You may be having a different degree of achievement, but you don't call it as a failure. And when that is the statement, family is not embraced when they are in the society or the community, that hey, my son or daughter could not do much, or he is not successful. That's not the statement, because he did something. He has solved the problem for 5%, 10%, or whatever the purpose attached to the startup, he did achieve. And that itself is enough to showcase, you know because there's a rat race. Hey, what did you do, after the graduation, or last 6 months, last 1 year, what did you do? So you have something, you are proud that your son or a daughter has done this.
Shashi, there is not a question of embarrassment or a sense of accomplishment or status. It's not just that, it's sustainability. So,
Yeah,
fine, you're solving a problem, and see, now what's happening, the current trend is that young people are not joining work of any nature at all. So, there is nil experience of any organizational work. So, those habits are missing. All right.
I read that.
And now you're jumping straight into starting your own entrepreneurship.
True.
But you need the stamina, you need those habits, you need that perseverance. And that's what I'm seeing firsthand. I'm seeing firsthand cases of young people just struggling within mental health issues because the frustration is so deep. And they
Yeah,
have these notions that they will find a venture capitalist sitting somewhere in the Silicon Valley in the United States who'll come to their rescue. But these are notions, it doesn't happen like that.
yeah,
And the success stories are so few. And you'll see Oyo everywhere, on all these structures and buildings, but what is below that? It's not actually translating. So
yeah,
it's a lot of very attractive foam and fluff on the outside, but inside it is puss. हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना उसको फुस है बिल्कुल वो. So
right. So
what about the mental health of these young people who just dive straight away into their own ventures without any work experience?
I read
Is
that.
it not? What do you say
So
about that?
I was associated with a Silicon Valley entity called Founder Institute, and
Hmm.
they run their program in more than 100 cities. They had a
Okay.
statistics. The interesting statistics is that the average age of entrepreneurs globally is 32 years, 33 years, and gradually it is coming down 1 or 2 years, year after year.
Hmm.
So their proposition, according to their study, is that a right founder is someone who has
Hmm.
worked in the industry at least for 5 years, and
Exactly.
who have seen the uh, uh, pressure of a family, in the sense, ideally he is a married guy. you
Mm.
know at that time, if he takes a conscious decision to get into startup world,
Mm.
probably he is responsible enough to understand the consequences of the failure, and
Right.
that is where some preparations would have been there to address such failures, and that is where it can go in a smooth way. However, in the case of campus entrepreneurship, when
Mm.
they are not exposed to the industry, when they do not have the family burden as a responsibility to carry on with, then there are more risk taking capabilities, but that itself can be a negative aspect, and they get into depression when something is not happening according to their plan. Obviously the setbacks causes a lot of side effects. That is what you have explained it very well. So my proposition to such youngsters is that do not take up something a big one, building a startup at one shot.
Mm.
Instead it has to be a step by step, baby steps in a right direction has to be grown organically. That
Mm.
is where I had picked up gig economy as a concept, because if you want to do something in one
Mm.
specific area as a startup idea, probably you should engage the clients in that domain and start executing smaller projects for them. The
Right.
global marketplace is accessible, and there are people at different geographies working on very interesting projects. Why not try aligning with those projects? Either you can
Mm.
join a startup as a contributor, as a coder, as an employee, or as some role, and work there for 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, understand the intricacies, then you take up your stuff. Now what's happening, there is a kind of a rat race, and
Mm.
that is ill designed startup ecosystem, which is uh, kind of a unnecessarily they are boosting that particular startup domain as something great, and something magical which can
Glamorous.
transform the lives of the young ones.
Mm.
So the young ones should not fall prey to such. so
Mm.
so that is where the responsibility of family, because the dependency on campus, their faculties, the environment alone is not enough. Instead the parents and the seniors in the family has to be in touch with the young ones and understand what is he doing with, and what is the team he is associated with, because every startup is not a solo journey. There are
Mm.
at least 2 3 people, 4 people joining hands together. These four great minds, great talents can do something very exciting. At the
Ah.
same time, if there is a wrong company, the whole plan can go into drain. So there has to be some watch out, and there has to be some constant interaction between the family and the young ones. So this is the only way we can solve the issues what we are explaining.
What you're saying, Shashidhar, is that first you bring up the children, put them through good education, and then educate yourself about the entrepreneurial environment, and then be there to support them also. So for parents, it's a much longer journey with the children, and the stakes are also higher, right?
Actually,
Mm.
now the nucleus families, working couples, and there are many modern families wherein the growing children, the children in the campuses are totally disconnected with the parents. Now
Mm.
that is a dangerous situation which is happening, and how much ever income they bring home, as long as they are not talking to their children, they are not understanding what is he into precisely. uh,
Mm.
that is the problematic situation.
Mm. That's interesting. Now they always also talk about what about the demographics of these young people who start their own businesses or try to start their own businesses. What about the gender representation? Are there more men versus women? Is there any such ratio?
Actually, uh, the demographic distribution is very complex. Startup as a culture is heavily, aggressively pushed in the metro cities. However, the rural districts are also finding the opportunities these days, especially the rise of agri-tech because of
Agritech, okay.
post COVID, during the pandemic, many things changed in the agri-tech and the district level initiatives are there in agri-tech, in food processing, in handicrafts and those area as well. So, so gender differentiation is not that much. Government is banking upon some old statistics wherein women in technology are lesser. They are trying to
Hmm.
create some space, extra space for the women there. Founders of startups also, uh, some articles I read that women founders are not being funded as much as the men folk.
Men,
uh,
okay.
however, statements are not based on solid credentials. This could be some incidental observations.
Hmm.
So today, as such, there are no gender differentiation or there is no urban-rural gap as such. So there
Okay.
are opportunities everywhere, especially in India,
Hmm.
and because of the government both at central and state level, uh, there is an provision. There is a good environment and platforms which are created.
Hmm.
Only thing is some misunderstandings, some misconcepts, or the vested interests within the ecosystem has to be identified and knocked out. So otherwise, we should encourage entrepreneurship, a meaningful entrepreneurship, purpose-driven entrepreneurship. It is good for the family. It is good for the young ones as well.
What are these vested interests that you're referring to?
So it will like any other industry segments,
Hmm.
some people come together, they form a cartel, and their interest is to earn a quick money, and overnight they try to make a big money and vanish.
Hmm.
So such people are there in every industry. Every government scheme is connected to such people. So this is
Hmm.
the real world. Anyway, it is difficult for the administration also to get rid of them. And
Hmm.
community, these are our own people. One among, if you are talking about 100 people, probably two three such vested interests. We see that probably initially we will not be knowing, but over a period of time suddenly we realize that hey, this guy was not the best fit in our group,
Hmm.
community. you know so
Okay.
we should be aware, and two three such bad incidents, so they start screening everybody.
Hmm.
If you look at the your security system, probably to
Hmm.
catch two three thieves, they
Hmm.
screen the entire crowd. So
Yeah.
another 95 96 good people, they are not at all the right target for screening, but administration, but the system, they do it. So
Hmm.
that is actually hurting the system.
Okay.
We should be aware.
How about your own interest? How did you get into this field? What prompted you to? I've heard you use this word disruptive very often wherever I've met you. So
Yeah.
what got you started on this?
Actually, I attended my engineering from Mysore way back during 88 to 92. After that, worked in Bangalore for almost 10 years, and next shifted to Delhi. 2004, I came here. So last 17 years, I'm in Delhi. All along in the technology domain, IT, telecom, I catered to small and medium businesses. My the job was to align a technology piece to their business and to make sure that business investment in this technology area are wise. Every rupee invested is having its worth there. Of course, these were all small niche technology companies in IT and telecom. But during this 2014-15 period, uh, instead of working for one company, I got an idea. Why not I get into engaging multiple companies on the similar job profile? That is where some sort of a consulting, or you call it as a freelancing, the job role started. I got into global marketplace. So those time it was called as Elance and Odesk. Today it's called as Upwork. So I am a successful freelancer in a global marketplace, engaging US, Europe, Australian clients. So my success gave me a thought. If Shashidhar is successful as a freelancer in the global marketplace, why not build hundreds of Shashidhars? And that can be
Okay.
a company. And that is why the name Green Workforce, Green Workforce,
Mm.
Green Part is without commuting, because you can stay at home and without travel, you are saving a lot of
Right.
contributing the green there. That is why
Right.
the workforce building is one part. Then demand side, who will hire this workforce,
Mm.
you know so that is where I was anyway connected to SME. Now those particular segment were the victims of this technology transformation, because big guys, they had a muscle power, they have money power, anyway they can maneuver. But the small SMEs, when they invest on technology, when they you know it gets obsolete, they feel the burnt of it, right? So
Exactly.
I was aware of that segment, and I extended my territory to the funded startups as well. That is where
Mm.
my entity started. So even today, I'm continuing, I'm pursuing this gig economy as a part of this green workforce model. Of course, beyond the urban, we went to rural districts. We
Yes.
are quite
Yes.
successful there. We did some fantastic projects in the rural districts. And
Uh,
today, for urban crowd also, especially when you're talking about the youth in colleges and universities, there is great opportunity available in rural area. You could help these young ones to have some sort of a buddy system. One or two team members from the rural area can virtually team up. They can start working, because the urban guys do not have privilege to work in the fields and work in the real world. However, they can pick up two of the rural guys who have land, who have resources, who have natural the
mm.
gift from the nature, and with their abilities, because it is a complementary skill, they bring it together. They can team up and they can work in a perfect synchronized way.
Yes, Shashidhar, I found that very fascinating about your work, the rural focus. Can you
Yes.
share any case history as a particularly successful, and is there a difference in the stamina, intellectual stamina, and emotional stability of a rural young versus an urban young? Is there a difference?
Actually, the rural ones are, as you said, brainwashed for startups. There it is. They are brainwashed to move to urban area.
Ah,
All of them in their high school, that group, they are aiming that they attend their college, university degrees,
mm,
and land up into a fancy job with fancy titles in
yes.
metro cities. That is
Ah,
their dream. That is their ambition.
mm,
And back home, they are seriously damaging it. It has become a old age home. The villages, they are left with people above 60, 70, 80 years,
mm.
and they have lands, they have many ancestral properties, but
Property. Mm,
nobody is there to take care of that. They are going idle.
mm,
People are
mm.
suffering. The old age people, they do not have immediate healthcare, facilities. They are
Hmm.
having a lot of difficulties. These young ones, they just move to the city, probably even for, simple 30-40 thousand rupees. They don't care for their own, village system. Instead, they come here and they want to live in a nucleus family. They are brainwashed again, as you are
Hmm.
talking, but in a
Hmm.
different sense.
Hmm.
So slowly, the awareness is being spread. The people are realizing the need to go back and connect back, and some amount of correction is happening. And
Hmm.
my experience is that, so just before this COVID, we went there. We created some waste to wealth projects, something going waste in the rural area. We
Hmm.
convert into a value, a utility,
Hmm.
as a green contribution. And
Hmm.
from there we are growing. Month by month we are growing. It's a good thing which is happening.
Okay, that's encouraging. Uh, what about this in particularly? I want to know from you. Typically, one hears about the incubators, the startup incubators. What does a startup incubator do exactly? So let's say I'm 23 years old and I want to. I have a great idea. Can I go to a startup incubator and will they help me to get the funding, or what exactly does an incubator do?
Yeah, so very important thing. I want to explain this because many are not aware of the startup ecosystem. So the startup ecosystem starts with the founder. Founder, an individual intending to, start with a venture, a
Right.
startup. Now, founder alone cannot work. He needs a co-founder. So teaming up
Okay.
with like-minded people with complementary skills who are married to some common idea, a great idea, to grow it from, a conceptual stage into a launch stage, right? So during
Right.
that journey from concept to the launch stage,
Hmm.
they need resources, they need experience, they need a network. All that cannot come of their own because of their own limitations.
Hmm.
That is where the entities like accelerators and incubators
Yes.
come into picture. So accelerators are those typically a short time engagement with accelerated work. Means if you are trying to do in the real world of your own, this 6 months activity is packaged into 2 months. They
Okay.
shrink the window
Hmm.
and they try to achieve the same outcome, with the same quality.
Okay.
So now the accelerated idea, when they accelerate and bring it to a stage where it can be, yes, grown into a bigger one,
Hmm.
that is the time it is placed into the incubator. There are
Okay.
hundreds of incubators right now in India. The nodal
Hmm.
agencies like Department of Science and Technology, METI, your Atal Incubation, your Agri
Hmm.
Ministry, Food Processing Ministry, all of them have their own incubators being set up. Now, the government fund, actually, for them it is easy to take the safest route, and for them the established campuses, the college and university campuses are the best place because they have a ready infrastructure, they have a
Right.
safe environment, etc. That is where the incubators are being established. However, MSME, KVIC are encouraging even the private industries and private communities as well to establish the incubators with the standards, the specifications, protocols they have established. And an incubator is typically 1 to 2 years or maximum 3 years engagement, wherein instead of you growing your company, your
Yes.
business in the open world, you are growing it in a cohort. You are not alone. You are growing
Hmm.
it along with 10 more people, 20
Hmm.
more, it is not people, 10 more teams or 20
Okay.
more teams together, you are growing. So your support for compliance, statutory
Mm.
accounting, or it could be IPR, intellectual property, or product designing, or market connect. All these resources are made available in the incubators for the incubatees.
Mm.
However, not everybody can get into the incubator. Normally, when they call for applications, good
Okay.
incubators, out of 600, 700 applications, 20,
Mm.
30 of them will be selected. And
Mm.
the not so good, around 200, 300 applications they receive, out of which they form a cohort of 15 to 20 maximum.
Okay.
So rest of them will, they are trying, they have to apply for multiple places, and somewhere they get in and start growing from there. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, yes, you have, Shashidhar. One final question. Is anybody in the gig economy ecosystem talking about what I consider a young person's primary support system? So I'll come back to the question I started with.
Yeah,
Is anybody talking about educating that support system or creating greater awareness so that they can be a better support to their young ones? Because families in India are so deeply invested in their young. That's what the culture is. And
yeah,
after having spent so much on their education, on bringing them up, when you're suddenly faced with a depressed youngster, it's heartbreaking for parents and families to watch that waste, right? Of a literally, and sometimes their young lives spiraling out of control
yeah,
just because there's been failure there.
yeah.
So does anybody talk about this particular segment? Is there any attempt to help them or address their concerns?
Uh, Actually, the startup policies by the governments, the respective state and the state governments, especially, the selected startups founders will be
Mm,
given 15,000 rupees per month as a sustenance amount for a period of 1 year, 2 years. So such
mm,
policies were made. Uh, it 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 is not come to the implementation to the extent it was expected. A lot of reasons of their own for the failure of such implementation. However, if
mm,
the founder is a strong, he has acquired a strong skill in particular area, the global marketplaces are the best places to practice it. Because a founder, when he's building a startup, I'm not
mm,
advising him to give all his 8 hours, 10 hours, sometime it goes up to 14 hours in a day. Instead of doing that, he has to spare at least 2 to 4 hours for himself,
mm, mm,
to make himself sustainable. That is where the global marketplaces are best place. Even otherwise, there are a lot of startups are, especially for the technology skills, are looking for part-time, uh, the contributors, work from home contributors. They can
mm,
engage, they can take such opportunities and make them sustainable. So if they are depend upon the parents' money, or the back end, the family support, probably they would have done it for 6 months maximum. you know
okay.
so within the
Mm,
6 months, if something is not working out, uh, they have to have plan B
mm,
to move further.
okay.
Because a business has to find money of its own. There is no
Right.
point of burning your own savings, your own money, and
Right.
finally at the end of the day you get into trouble.
Mm,
That should not happen. And if somebody has experienced that, probably they have to shout out and say that, hey, this is what is my problem. And if they talk to people, there
mm,
are good people who are ready to
mm,
hire them, who are ready to support them, and who understand the pain of such founders, and they are ready to handhold for the further growth.
I see. And yes, again, Shashidhar, one more thing. Have you had experience with young people suffering
Yes,
stresses and mental health issues because of their struggles being entrepreneurs.
yes, yes. Actually, I don't want to take a name, but a young one who was working for an MNC,
Hmm.
when they work in the company, they have all power backup, the brand,
Yes.
they think they can conquer the world. And without thinking twice, they jump into entrepreneurial journey. And it's not that easy. Entrepreneurial journey makes one very humble because it is not easy to achieve the,
Yes.
goals what they have set for themselves.
Hmm.
So he thought his retiring father could fund him with, because at the time of retirement, he knows that X amount is expected to come. But
Hmm.
father was a retired engineer, and he didn't support because he
Hmm.
has his own observations. He said, no, no, no,
Yes.
nothing, nothing doing, and it's better you go back to the job.
Hmm.
Right. So with great difficulty, with I think there was a tussle for almost 6 months or 1 year, and finally this guy, who went back to the job, and that period, the struggling period, there are a lot of mental agony.
Yes.
Incidentally, I wanted to support them, but the guy, he was shying away to tell his problem, to
Hmm.
come out and share everything. Instead,
Okay.
he kept for himself. So we lost one great talent in the startup
Yes.
world, but
Hmm.
he saved himself, getting more damage out of the failure. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Shashidhar. That was, yeah, that was good. Good to. I think this conversation needs to happen more. More people need to come out and
Yes.
share the struggles that they are
Yes.
experiencing, because it is so much about economy. It's about making money, but it's also about being happy, right? Living a
True.
happy life.
True.
There has
True.
to be a
True.
balance,
True.
right?
True.
Thank you very much, Shashidhar. Any last
Thank you,
words,
Nirja.
or are you done?
Yeah, good to go. Good to go.
All
Because
right,
this debate, it never ends.
it
Because
never
there is
ends.
so much to talk. Anyway, we are in the social media, and we are always
Yes,
available for conversation.
yes.
Uh, yeah, thank you, Nirja. You did a good job, actually. Bringing up such topic, and the disconnect between the seniors and the juniors in the family is a great area to address, and everybody has to think. And yeah, we did our job.
It's a great. It needs to be addressed because Shashidhar, the stakes are very high. It can be sometimes life-threatening in
I
families
know,
for
I know,
young people.
I know.
It can be very dangerous at times.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So with
Thank you.
that, I'm taking you off the screen. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank
Well, I hope you all found value in that, and I'll see you again with another relevant topic next week in the Teenager 6.